They made the playoffs last year, but we're one of the first of few teams to be absolutely steamrolled by the Vegas Golden Knights. Perhaps not their fault, but the Jets seem to be holding on to...
Rick Bowness certainly thought it was their fault.
Yes, he did.
I'm trying to be gentle. I can't start with the hammer, Jesse.
Okay.
We're just getting this thing
Rick Bowness had one person to blame, and it was his entire team.
We've done enough Central previews that I think this is the grumpiest division in the NHL.
It has to be. There's definitely a lot of unrest here.
Yeah.
People aren't happy, which I think makes it a potentially explosive division, especially once you get outside of the first two teams.
And fun to follow as a fan.
They're not bad, but the Jets do seem to be holding on to an era that is bygone with diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. And you have to ask the question, is going to the playoffs just the only goal here? And so let's start here. They finished fourth in the division last year, 95 points they squeaked in. What are the betting odds? What do you think?
95 points?
Yeah, they had 95 points last year.
Man, this is the only team in the NHL I think I would say this for. I would never bet on the Winnipeg Jets.
Wow.
Like
you just don't know?
Like for or against. They trade Connor Hellebuck. That's a swing of like 20 points in the standings.
Yep.
So I don't know. 89.5.
Okay. Jesse.
What was it last season?
95.
I'm gonna go right around in there. 93.5.
You're close, 91.5. Steve is actually closer without going over. Biggest question has to be, and Steve mentioned it, the future of Connor Hellebuck. Contract is up at the end of this year. And here's the thing. He walks into camp, and if Steven Stamkos hadn't walked in and said what he said about the Lightning and the lack of extension, Connor Hellebuck's, I think his discussion with the media would have been the top story that day.
Scheifele too.
Well, he said, I'm here to win a cup, whether it's here or somewhere else. What did Scheifele say?
Scheifele was, like Stamkos, also disappointed he didn't have a deal done. He's walking into the exact same situation where he's just a UFA.
Yeah, but...
Well, he makes less.
A little different.
But
one of them's won a bunch of stuff.
One of them's Stamkos.
One of them is the greatest player in their franchise's history. The other is Mark Scheifele.
Yeah. And it's not that Mark Scheifele's not a great player. I want to focus on Connor Hellebuck because I do have Scheifele later on.
He improved his two-way game last year big time.
So Connor Hellebuck is a guy that, he's just one of those goaltenders of a generation that are so spectacular. The thing is that he's right around that big scary number in sports, 3-0. You turn 30, you're basically dead. But you turn 30 and people are like, okay, start the stopwatch. When's this guy's career going to die? Is it this year? I don't know. It could be in a couple of years, but I don't know if I want to take that risk. Connor Hellebuck seems like a pretty fair bet, but is he going to be a Winnipeg Jet for very much longer?
He could sign a nightmare contract next summer. No, I don't. Okay. Sometimes you head into a season and you're like, this is this guy's last year here, and that's okay. We're going for the Stanley Cup, and if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. And if we lose them, we lose them, right? Winnipeg cannot go into a season and think that way. They can't think that way. They have a really hard time recruiting people to play in Winnipeg. That's the beginning, middle, and end of it. They don't really have a replacement in waiting for Connor Hellebuck. They don't really have a replacement in waiting for Mark Scheifele. You need to trade these players and get assets for them. You can't just let them walk. It's not good enough that you have cap space at the end of it because you have to pay one of the biggest premiums in the NHL to get players to play in your city.
And that's all fair, Steve.
Yeah.
But when you're True North Sports and Entertainment, and you probably lose money in real dollars on this team every year anyway, and that's okay because you're owned by like two of the richest people in the country, like billionaires. You probably need the gate revenue from the first round. So to me, they have to be a part of this team unless there's a dramatic fall off in October and November, and then it's like, okay, we don't have a chance.
Yeah, but going after gate revenue this year in the playoffs affects your ability to go after gate revenue for the next half decade.
Well, I hope that they have a strong business pitch in for that, because I'm guaranteeing you what management will say is that might be, but at least we can guarantee it this year. I can't guarantee it for the next 3 or 4.
It's bad business.
Now, Jesse.
Yes.
I want to ask you about 3 names.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask Steve about them too, but Wanted to bring Jesse in on this one.
Okay.
The names are Velarde, Iafallo, and Kupari. The return for Pierre-Luc Dubois. What did they bring to this lineup?
Great trade.
I actually really like it for them.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job with that trade with a guy who was very unhappy and is unhappy in multiple places he's been, and let's see how it works out in LA, but that's a different conversation. They filled out the rest of the group, you know? They filled out the depth. of their forward group, and I think that now that you are barring a catastrophic start to the season, like Adam said, the team is going to be competitive in all aspects of the season. They're going to be fighting. You know, they're not bad. They have such good pieces throughout the lineup. It's not like we've talked about a whole bunch of teams in this division on our other previews, and you look at some of the other teams and you say, okay, there's guys. And you're like, what can these guys be? Those three you just named are legitimate talents. There are other talents here like Scheifele, like Ehlers, like Kyle Connor, and they have weapons. That's why I'm not too worried about them falling off too far or not being competitive, because there aren't just a collection of bunch of guys here. There are legitimate NHL talents throughout this lineup.
Couple guys coming off down years too.
Yeah,
Connor's a big one.
The one thing I want to say is I think there was a time when Nikolai Ehlers and William Nylander were considered the same. And they were almost drafted like it's one after the other. I think it's like 6 and 8, isn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. So or
9th overall for Ehlers.
Okay, so it was Nylander or Ehlers, right? So Nylander would have been 8th.
Nylander was 8th. Yeah.
So Ehlers hasn't gotten worse. There have been some injuries, but him and Bowness don't seem to mix. If Ehlers is going to be effective, Bowness has to play him.
Well, he didn't mix with Maurice either, right? So
is it now the common denominator is the player?
Jets fans would, I think, disagree, but like at some point you got to do what your coach likes. I mean, when does it stop mattering that you have all this potential and gosh, it's just the coach? Like at some point you got to do something different, man. Same with, to a different extent, Ville Heinola on the back end. That's something that's exciting. I know. Brad and Liss on Game Over Winnipeg have been losing their minds about that. And don't tease me, Rick. But Ville Heinola has been incredible in the minors. Like he's too good for the American League. So let's finally see what he does in the NHL.
What about a guy like Cole Perfetti, who for years has been? Is he going to take the step forward? Is this the year?
More like Cole Ferretti, because he's ready to take the next step at the NHL.
Is that what you think?
I really like this player. Like we're talking about a guy with maybe not right now, but I think he's got easy 30-goal potential in the league. Asking him to do it right away is kind of tough, but there's a guy who could take a big step for them.
He demonstrated last year he's more of the playmaker type. He got into 51 games, threw up 22 assists. You know, like he might.
That's all right.
He might emerge into that guy who has the 50 assists, the 60 assist season instead of just the pure goal scorer.
He's got offensive gifts.
Yeah. Like there's no doubt in my mind that Cole Perfetti is going to be a good player.
Rasmus Kupari is interesting because he's offensively great. He is every Winnipeg Jets good forward over the last 10 years. Offensively great and really needs to clean up that defensive game.
Sure.
But he is a creative playmaker guy. Fast, can play center or wing, so they can experiment. I kind of like that. I want to know, Mark Scheifele, what would you do? Do you keep Steve? Do you keep Connor Hellebuck?
Kupari, before you move on from him, he was interesting in LA because he was too good for the Ontario Reign, but there was no room on the Kings for him.
Right.
So there you have a really talented guy who hasn't really had a legit shot in the NHL, and that's the kind of return you want in deals when you're making them for a guy like PLD.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with Sean Dursey, right? Because he had to move because they need to make room for Brant Clark because there was too much
the Kings
good defense.
Did a really good job of just hoarding young talent, and it's paying dividends.
I want to know what you guys would do with Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele. Jesse, Connor Hellebuck, what would you do?
I don't think that anybody should be trading away a top 5 goaltender in the National Hockey League.
So do you extend him?
I would.
Okay.
I would find a way to extend Hellebuck.
Steve Dangle.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can extend him, you do it. But I think if they could do it, they would have done it by now. And Mark Scheifele, I'd invent time travel, go back 2 years, and trade him then.
Okay, Jesse, what about Mark Scheifele?
Oh, Scheifele? I don't know if there's an avenue for Scheifele to come back.
2 seasons away from him being on the podium demanding to know where the Jets were headed because he had to make a decision about his future. We're only a few months away from his coach seemingly calling him and the other leaders out, as you know, the lack of heart.
How are they still here?
I don't know. Jets defense looks like this. You got a Norris candidate in Josh Morrissey with Dylan DeMello, Brandon Dillon. I wonder if Neil Pionk has they need him to have a bounce back year. He needs to be a top 4 defenseman again.
Ooh.
Neil Pionk hasn't been good for a couple of years.
I know.
I kind of wonder if that one year he caught lightning in a bottle and maybe that was that.
Okay, so it seems like the Jets season hinges on a lot of players having the best case scenario.
Well,
too many players.
That's a lot of teams in this division. One of them is going to be right. The one thing that could like galvanize them, that they can sort of rally around, Josh Morrissey. They were calling Josh Norrisy last year, and the dude wasn't even nominated. I think they're going to do everything in their power to get him at least a nomination for that thing.
So with that, where do you have the Jets finishing?
Again, I hate this division with all my heart because every team in it has like a 3-place swing. I have the Jets 4th because I didn't know where else to put them.
Jesse Blake, where do you have him?
I thought the exact same thing. I said, I don't know, so I'm just going to put him in the middle.
Yeah.
Number 4.
They could finish like 2nd, maybe even 7th.
Be last if they blow up the team.
Well, if Connor Hellebuck's gone, for sure. I have them currently as it stands. I also have them in 4th.
Oh, there you go.
I don't see how they couldn't be better than St. Louis, Arizona, Nashville, or Chicago, except if Connor Hellebuck isn't there anymore.
Yeah,
I guess we'll see.
it's kind of a big swing.